If it feels like this time of year doesn't pull you outward, that Christmas feels less like a celebration and more like a room that's gotten too loud, too bright, too crowded with expectations you never agreed to carry, you're not imagining that, and you're not missing something everyone else has. You might notice a quiet relief in choosing distance, not because you don't care, not because you're cold or detached, but because something in you exhales when the noise fades. Like stepping out of a busy hallway and into a smaller room where the air finally feels yours again. People often confuse that choice with loneliness, but what you're feeling isn't an absence, it's a preference for a different kind of warmth. There's a story we're told every December that closeness must be loud, that love must gather, that meaning only exists where there are many voices speaking at once, and if you don't step into that story, something must be wrong. But sometimes the most honest place isn't the center of the room. Sometimes it's the quiet corner, a chair pulled back slightly, a low light, a sense of being present without being watched. If you've never had the words for why that feels necessary to you, that's all right. You don't need to defend it here. You don't need to explain it yet. Just stay for a moment. Let the room be quiet. We'll come back to why this matters. Time December arrives. Christmas is already heavy. Not heavy with meaning at first, heavy with expectations, with inherited rituals, with silent rules about how you're supposed to feel, where you're supposed to be, and who you're supposed to become for a few days. There's a version of you the season seems to demand, warmer, louder, more available, more grateful. Even joy becomes a performance, something you're meant to wear visibly, like a bright sweater that doesn't quite fit. For some people, that performance feels natural. For others, it feels like standing under a spotlight that never turns off. Every pause feels noticeable. Every quiet moment feels misread. Christmas culture rarely leaves room for interior lives. It celebrates togetherness in volume. It rewards visibility. It assumes that love looks like proximity and meaning multiplies with head count. But that assumption carries weight. It presses gently at first, then more insistently. It turns personal rhythms into deviations. It frames opting out as loss instead of discernment. You can feel this weight before anything happens, in invitations, in casual questions, in the way absence is explained as something needing justification. And so the season arrives already crowded, not with people yet, but with noise, with stories about what closeness is supposed to look like. If you feel that weight before you feel joy, it doesn't mean you're resisting celebration. It may just mean you're sensitive to pressure. And pressure, even if wrapped in lights, is still pressure. That quiet noticing matters more than the season admits. The resistance doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself with anger or defiance. It shows up as a small tightening, a hesitation you can't quite justify, a sense of pulling back before you've consciously decided to. You might feel it in your body before you name it in your thoughts, a heaviness when plans are mentioned, a fatigue that appears early as if something in you already knows how much energy this will cost. This resistance isn't rebellion. It's not rejection. It's closer to the way the tide withdraws before it rises again, not because the ocean is emptying, but because it's responding to a rhythm older than the moment. Often the mind rushes in to explain it away, to call it selfish, to label it avoidance, to tell you that if you tried harder, the feeling would disappear. But the resistance remains, quiet, patient, waiting to be heard. It doesn't ask for drama. It asks for space. What's difficult is that this kind of resistance doesn't fit the season's language. There's no polite script for saying, "This is too much for me," when the world insists that more is better, louder is warmer, together is always safer. So the resistance stays internal. It becomes a private negotiation, a quiet conflict between what is expected and what feels sustainable. And even if you don't act on it, even if you show up anyway, that inner pull is still there, not as a refusal, but as information. There's a reason it keeps returning. We'll name that reason later. For now, it's enough to notice that the resistance exists at all.
There's a way some inner worlds are built that isn't obvious from the outside. They don't respond well to constant input. They don't organize themselves while things are still happening. Meaning arrives later, after the room is emptied and the door has closed. For minds like this, quiet isn't a luxury. It's the condition that allows thoughts to finish forming. Imagine a library where books are always being returned but never shelved. Conversations echo between the stacks. Pages are turned mid-sentence. Nothing is ever lost, but nothing is fully found either. Noise doesn't destroy these inner worlds. It interrupts them, again and again. So when the noise finally stops, something important happens. Ideas settle. Emotions reveal their shape. Not all at once, but gently, like dust drifting down after movement has ceased. This isn't sensitivity in the fragile sense. It's depth that requires stillness to be seen clearly. Christmas, for all its warmth, often fills the shelves faster than they can be organized. New impressions arrive before old ones have been understood. Joy overlaps with obligation. Affection overlaps with performance. From the outside, stepping away can look like disinterest, but internally it's often an act of care. Care for coherence, care for emotional continuity, care for an inner order that can't be rushed without becoming distorted. This is why silence can feel nourishing instead of empty, why being alone doesn't register as absence, but as alignment. There's nothing mystical about this, and nothing that needs fixing. It's simply a different way meaning is made.
Not all connection feeds you in the same way. Some kinds of closeness feel warm at first, then slowly begin to drain. Others seem quiet on the surface, but leave you steadier afterward. The difference isn't how much interaction there is, it's what kind of attention the interaction requires. Noise demands response. It pulls at you. It asks you to react in real time before you've had a chance to feel what's actually happening inside. Nourishment is slower. It allows space between moments. It doesn't rush your nervous system to keep up. Think of light. A soft lamp lets you see detail. A glare washes everything flat. The room is brighter, but nothing is clearer. Holiday gatherings often operate like glare. So much brightness, so many signals, laughter, stories, expectations overlap it at once. Even kindness can become overwhelming when it arrives without pause. For someone who processes deeply, this isn't about disliking people. It's about the cost of staying open when there's no shade. Solitude creates that shade. It restores contrast. It lets feelings regain their edges instead of blurring together. This is why stepping away can feel replenishing rather than lonely, why silence can feel like food rather than emptiness. When the noise subsides, the inner world doesn't go dark. It comes back into focus.
Presence doesn't always mean being everywhere. There's a kind of presence that spreads itself thin, touching many rooms without ever settling into any of them. And there's another kind that chooses carefully, entering fewer spaces but arriving more fully. Selective presence isn't withdrawal, it's discernment. It's the difference between leaving the lights on in every room and sitting quietly by one fire long enough to feel its warmth. Less movement, more depth. For someone attuned to their inner world, presence has weight. It carries cost. Every conversation, every gathering, every emotional exchange leaves an imprint, not in a dramatic way, just enough that it needs time to be metabolized. Christmas often assumes presence should be automatic, that availability is a virtue in its own. But that assumption ignores the reality that attention is finite. Choosing where to be is also choosing how to be. So, absence isn't always avoidance. Sometimes it's conservation, a way of protecting meaning from dilution. This doesn't make presence rarer, it makes it truer. When you step into a space selectively, you're not half there. You're not scanning for exits. You're not bracing. You're settled. That kind of presence can't exist everywhere at once, and it doesn't need to. It was never meant to.
Earlier, we spoke about the quiet corner of the room, the chair pulled back slightly, the low light, the warmth that doesn't demand anything from you. It's still there. Nothing about this moment needs to be justified. Not your pace, not your distance, not the way you've chosen to move through this season. Christmas will keep being Christmas, loud in places, soft in others, full of meanings that don't belong to everyone in the same way. You don't have to resolve that tonight. You can let the noise stay where it is. Let the expectations pass through without landing. Let yourself sit where the warmth feels steady instead of overwhelming. Solitude, when chosen, doesn't close you off from life. It gives life somewhere to land. So if you're here now, listening quietly, that's enough. Nothing is missing from this moment. The fire doesn't burn brighter because more people are watching it. It burns because it's allowed to be still.